so what we want to do is catch up where we were. So we left off in chapter 3 last week. And so do you remember the scenario? So Esther, in chapter 3, we saw there was this plot to eradicate all the Jews. And it was led by the guy named Haman, all right? So he goes into the king and says, there's got some people that don't obey you, don't pay their taxes. And so if you give me permission, we'll get rid of them and I'll pay you a bribe, what it amounted to, from all the provinces. The king says, okay, go ahead, but keep the money yourself. And so he doesn't tell him it's the Jewish people. And maybe the king just thinks it's a handful, but this is going to be quite an eradication, right? And so this edict is sent out to all the provinces, right? And I think someone made the point afterwards, like, I didn't realize it wasn't just a citywide. This is a worldwide eradication. And since this is the largest nation at the time and probably the biggest boundaries of any single nation ever, that would include all the Jews in Israel, right? Destroyed. So this is quite amazing kind of thing that's going to happen only because of the hate of one man. Of course, he is probably a descendant of the Amalekites, and they've always been in confrontation with the Israelites. And so there's some deep history to all of it. So that happens, and when it goes out, the whole city of Susa is in confusion because these Jews are an integrated part of the Babylonian, well, now the Medo-Persian culture. And they have businessmen, and some of them are advisors, like Mordecai, and they're leaders. And so the idea they're all going to be killed, can you imagine the uproar that's going on, okay? And so that's where we left off, and now that takes us to chapter 4, okay? And so we'll try to do chapter 4 and 5 and just stop there. But here, Esther is going to try to comfort Mordecai because Mordecai is in distress. He's fasting with sackcloth and ashes. That's when she learns of Haman's plot because Mordecai informs her, so she's just totally oblivious to what's going on. And so Mordecai gives an order, you need to go talk to the king on behalf of the Jews. Now that's going to be problematic because what has she done about her ethnic origin? Yes. She's kept it a secret. And so in many ways, she's deceived the king. And when she goes in to tell him, it's going to be tough, and so for other various reasons too. So she calls for a fast. And so we want to look at these things as they go on. So let's read in verse 1. So in chapter 4, verse 1, good to see you all that just walked in. All right? So when Mordecai, verse 1 of chapter 4, learned of all that had been done, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes. That's a rough type of fabric you would wear. And went out in the midst of the city and wailed loudly and bitterly. He went as far as the king's gate, for no one was entered the king's gate clothed in sackcloth. And in each province, verse 3, where the command and decree of the king came, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, and wailing, and many lay on sackcloth and ashes. So here we see the reaction. Well, I guess so, because this is a death sentence, isn't it, that's upon them. Now, we did our study on fasting before, and it's this voluntary self-affliction. And so that's why they put on a rough garment. They're afflicting themselves to try to get God's attention. Like, we're in mourning here. And the idea of eating food and being comforted is just the antithesis of what we're feeling. And so it's a natural thing, right? And so, again, you see that pattern. With the fasting, what comes with it always? Prayer. It doesn't mention it specifically here, but they're praying to God for some type of deliverance. And again, I'm mindful when we moved into this building, we fasted for the whole day. And again, I know some of you fasted and continue to fast since then. It's a good thing. But especially in a calamity, it's very appropriate. Yes?
So with that being said, would you suggest that if we fast, that we should dress comfortably? Does that make it more, if that's
Yeah.
value to it.
Probably yes and no, because Jesus says when you fast, wash your face, wear clean clothes so no one knows. Because your God will see it, he knows. But there are times when there's just these pending crises that you don't care. You're doing it because everyone's doing it. You want everyone to know. This is very, very serious. So yes and no, all right? And so if we were on the brink of all being imprisoned and they were going to take this church from the building and imprison all of us, we might just go downtown and sit and fast and sackcloth and ashes as a protest nationally, right?
I guess I would
Yeah.
think more as like, don't be comfortable while you fast. Like, don't sit back and watch television.
Exactly.
Sit there and pray and
Yeah.
be comfortable.
Exactly. But again, I think it's important we just see the importance of fasting. It's trying to make this direct line to God and showing that we're passionate. We need you desperately. You're crying. Yes, and then over there.
Isn't the fasting though between you and God?
Absolutely.
Not to show other people.
Right. That's the general idea.
That is trying to be, I'm better than
Right.
you or whatever.
But this is a national fast, so everyone's doing it because it's such a national crisis for the Jews. When I say national, I'm talking about as a nation of people. They don't have a nation right now. Yes. Clinton, go ahead.
If I'm not mistaken, the sackcloth is kind of like a burlap bag.
Yes, that'd be the closest thing. Can you imagine wearing burlap against your skin?
Right up.
Yeah. And ashes, they throw it in the air. Go ahead.
What time, I forgot, or maybe he told us the time frame. When they started this, how much advance notice did they actually have? Was it months or?
Yes, yes. Yes, I think upwards of a year. All right, so that's going on. So there's the reaction, and it's all over every province. So this is going on everywhere, okay, that map we were looking at earlier. So it's interesting. Esther seems to be totally oblivious to what's going on. Maybe because she's, again, a kept woman in the harem, and it's just not been relayed to her what's happening. So Esther's maid and the eunuchs came and told her, and the queen writhed in great anguish. And what she hears is the condition of her cousin Mordecai. She doesn't know about why he's fasting and mourning, but she's just stricken like, what's wrong with him? What's going on? What kind of calamity? And so she sends garments to clothe him, some nice clothes, like that's going to soothe him, right? Like, it's okay. Here's a present from the queen. It's all going to be okay. But he did not accept them. And that's indicative of what? The state of mind that he's in, right? No, I'm not going to wear these clothes. This is not the time to wear nice clothes. This is a time for weeping and sorrow. And so, have you ever been that way in your life?
Oh, yeah.
And there might be that way in the country. This is the appropriate response. And when it's about a child or a health issue, it's healthy to fast. And we're going to see Esther catches on. She's going to have a fast, no food, no water for 3 days. No water. That's how serious this thing is, all right? So there's where it opens up. So now we're in verse 5. So Esther summoned Hafer, if that's how you say his name, and the king's eunuchs, whom the king had appointed to tend to her, ordered him to go to Mordecai to learn what this was and why it was. So he goes to Mordecai to the city square in front of the king's gate. So she goes, I got to know what's going on, because she's totally unaware. Ignorance is not bliss in a situation like this, right? Sometimes I don't want to know what's going on in the world, but in this thing that affects you immediately, personally, you need to know. And so to learn what and why, in other words, why are you fasting and what's the reason? And so that's what she's doing. So he, verse 8, we're in Mordecai, verse 7 actually, tells him all that had happened to him, the exact amount of money that Haman had promised to pay the king's treasury for the destruction of the Jews. What do we call that? It was a bribe, basically, okay? He also gave him a copy of the text of the edict, because it was sent to everybody, so there's copies everywhere, which had been issued in Susa for the destruction, that he might show Esther an informer, and order her to go into the king to implore his favor and to plead with him for her people. So he comes back and related Mordecai's word to Esther. Esther spoke to Hafer and ordered him to reply to Mordecai, and we're going to read her reply in a second. So it's interesting. It's not a rumor. He sends a copy of the letter so she can read it, right, for herself. Now, why do you think? Because it's such a horrendous thing they're going to do, she might be in denial. No, this cannot be true.
But it includes her too.
Yeah, oh, yeah, that's going to come up. Yeah, but she reads it for herself. And, you know, I think that just harkens to just the way we're going to convince people about the gospel is let them read it for themselves. And dealing with an issue with a friend of ours and their daughter's involved in, you know, some denominational doctrines. And I'm going to read to her, here's what your church teaches. Do you believe this yourself? Because it's the antithesis of who God is and what the gospel is. But it's not just argue with them, say it's wrong. Just ask them, do you really believe this? You know, and that's what you have to do is get people to make a choice, a decision, and verbalize it. And rather than just argue and fight, okay? And that's what he does here. He just says, there it is. What are you going to do with it, woman? All right? He didn't call her that. It's cousin. All right? But he orders her to go into king to implore. Now, that's interesting that he says, you got to go talk to the king. And here's what you got to do. I'm going to show her. I'm going to inform her. I'm going to order her. Then implore the king. And then plead with the king for favor on behalf of his people. Because she's in a position to do that because she's the queen. All right? His wife. Yes.
She could have lost her life for doing that.
Yes, and we'll see that in the next couple of verses. Exactly. So there's what's going on. Yes.
That women had a voice at that time because during the New Testament times they were not.
Yes. Well, she really doesn't have a voice.
She was taking a chance.
And so let me just speak to that because everything's going contrary to the way you think things should go, the way they're going to turn. There's going to be a great reversal is what I'm trying to say. They're going bad, south, really bad, and all of a sudden they just turn around. Even though God is never mentioned in this book, you see his unseen hand always working.
All the way through the book.
All the way through. Because a lot of it doesn't make sense. And yes, she should not have an audience with the king. You can't just demand it, especially a woman, right? And so we'll see that. So she writes back, and this expresses the condition of the day. Now, again, just because it's the way the Medo-Persian Empire conducted business doesn't mean God approves of it. It's just being historically accurate, right? I mean, she's been in a stripped from her home, or ripped from her home, you know, made part of the brothel, and then lost her virginity, and then luckily was chosen, I guess luckily, to be the wife, the queen. But it's not been a good ride for her, is it? It's been terrible, as we talked about last week. And now this is put on her. And this is her misery inside, her emotional conflict. He says, all the king's servants and the people of the king's province know that any man or woman, so it's both. It was a rule that day with two exceptions that you cannot go approach the king unless you're asked to come, you're summoned. And the exception would be his closest advisors. They could come and talk to him, hey, we're being attacked or whatever. They'd always have audience. And the only other exception, if you went in and the king extended his scepter to you. But if he didn't, you're dead. And it wasn't just this empire, it was be other countries as well. Yes?
But what's the legitimacy of that? It's his queen. I get it if somebody like peasant in the whatever, but he was pleased when he saw her. So what's the reality that he's going to see his queen and be like, oh, you walked in without me summoning you off of your head? Like, I get it, but I don't, is that really?
I guess historically it happened. And so, yeah, it is a reality. And I think that's why she has so much angst. Because, well, let's finish it. It says, we know that anyone that comes into the king's in the inner court who is not summoned, he has but one law, that he or she be put to death, unless the king holds out to the golden scepter so he may live. And he goes, and I have not been summoned. This is the queen talking, his wife. Obviously, after the time has passed, he's lost some favor for her, or else he's been so busy, I don't know. But for 30 days, he hadn't asked for me. And she hasn't gone in for 30 days. Why? Because he didn't summon her. She understood it was serious. So we just have to take it at face value, right? But it's a good question you're asking, because it's so foreign to us, isn't it? It's just so foreign to us. I mean, my wife, if she wants to talk to me, I have to drop everything and listen, you know. And
Do we have records of kings that actually killed their wife?
that's your homework for next week. Can you do that, please? No, seriously, that'd be great. You know, and truly, I have a rule that anytime she calls, I answer it. In the middle of class today, I called. I took the call because my family has first priority, right?
You extend the scepter.
Yeah, it's understood.
You know, it's going to be Middle Eastern to Eastern pretty much. I think those kind of kings.
Yeah,
Not so much the Western, like
the
England
Greeks or the,
Germany
yeah.
whatever, but the Eastern.
You just have to not value any life if you're going to kill your
It's
wife.
just very different cultures.
Well, he's living in America. I'll get to you. The king is living in his own little sheltered paradise, you know, and it's in the yeah. He's insulated from all the problems of the world until his advisors come and tell him. And it's like, you don't come in and mess up my world, you know, and it's arrogance and power and just so many things going on. Yes, Mary. Henry VIII, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, people are, yeah, well, I won't get started. So the question is she going to risk her life? Because she knows, that's why she's telling him, don't you know? The answer basically is no, I'm not going. She's telling, he ordered it, and she's basically saying what? No, I'm not going because I'll die. At least she's fearful of it.
Well,
David.
I can see Esther's fear of that, or her concern, again, because 30 days has passed and the king hasn't summoned her. So therefore, there's been this extended period. Now what, I'm going to go in there? Surely, if he wanted to see me, he would have called for me.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So there's something else going on, and if I interrupt whatever's going on, I maybe not get the scepter.
I'm taking my life in my own hands. All right. So now, does Mordecai know this?
Yep, he would.
Yeah, he knows this. But Esther's just pouring out her heart. I can't do this. I think she's saying no. I can't do this. Because you know, and everybody else knows, Mordecai, that I could lose my life. I'm not going. Well, I wonder if we've ever had things we feared and we feel like maybe that God has put this in front of us and we should do it, but no, I can't do that. I might lose something.
That almost sounds like a Peter moment at the fire around the barrel, you know?
Are you one of them? No, I don't know the man. That's right. And that's what we have to talk about here, because what will she choose? As Christians or people of God, we can be passive observers or we can be active participants. Now, Jesus says, you're blessed in what you do, not in what you say. And he says, James says himself, I'll show your faith by my works, not by my words. Because it's impossible to show your faith without works. Jesus, said, blessed is the one who hears my word and acts on them. He's looking for active participants that are willing to deny themselves and pick up their cross and risk their life. And that's as much true as it is today. And the biggest problem with the Lord's people is too many of them are scared, or else they're too distracted and busy, and they're just bystanders. Because it's fun watching. Oh, and it's fun. You feel like you're part of it because you're just watching. but there will become a decision or a place in everyone's life. It's a defining moment. It'll be a fork on the road. I got to choose whether I'm going to continue to be passive or I'm going to be an active person. And sometimes I believe, it's my personal belief from when I read scripture, that everyone gets that opportunity once in their life just to become a Christian, at least once, where you have this crisis or a moment or someone comes in your life and you have a chance to choose to follow Christ, become a Christian in the first place. I believe because God desires all men to be saved, he's going to make that happen at least once in your life. And if you choose no, you're not guaranteed a second chance. Maybe it'll come. Maybe it'll come later. I don't know. But God being a fair and just God, he gives everyone the opportunity at least once. And most people say what? No. As Christians, it's the same way. There will be moments in our life that I have to choose the fork of the road of an easy life, being passive and not involved and just kind of coasting and let other people do it, or I'm going to be a doer and take all the flack on the hardship that comes with it. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. And that's what she's being pushed with right now. Jesus had his defining moment. Where was it? In the garden. I know it's in the garden because that's when he prayed. He said, Lord,
He wanted that cup to be taken away.
I don't want to do this. He's just like Esther. I don't want to do this. And how come I can say he didn't want to do this?
Because he said it.
Let this, that was his prayer request. Let it pass, this cup of suffering. 3 times. But he said, yeah, I know it's your will, not mine. But I don't want to do it. 3 times. And he had to make a choice. Am I going to, it's a defining moment, isn't it? And we say, oh, it was easy for Jesus because he's the Son of God. No, he learned obedience, as we said last time, by the things which he suffered. He suffered. And he was heard because of the tears that he wept. And so that's Esther. She's just a preview of the coming Jesus, because she's going to be a deliverer, just like Jesus was. Everything Old Testament is a physical picture of what Jesus did for us, of our spiritual reality. Now, this is for a nation physically. Jesus died for the world spiritually. All right? So, there it is. So, Mordecai, this is the most famous answer in all the book of Esther. If anyone knows anything about Esther, they know this text. All right? Maybe they don't know where it is. Maybe they can't quote it, but they know the text. So, Mordecai comes back, and let's read it together. Mordecai told them to reply to Esther. It's interesting. This is just... It's not face-to-face. He's sending people back and forth, all right? There's all these exchanges. This is like the 3rd exchange. Do not imagine that you in the king's palace, this little sanctuary, right? This little refuge, this little place that is cut off from the rest of the world, don't expect that you can escape any more than all the Jews. That's because why? She's a Jew. For if you remain silent, that's the passive observer, right? I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to get involved. Here's what he says. If you remain silent this time, relief and deliverance will arise from the Jews from another place, and you and your father's house will perish. That's very interesting, because what's he asking her to do? But deliver the people by talking to the king, who has the power he thinks to make it happen. But even if you don't, will there be relief and deliverance? He says there will. Not through her, but now what does he mean by that?
Well, the seed has to continue in order for Jesus to come, and so there will be deliverance, maybe not by the hand of Esther.
Well, that's very interesting you say that, because I'm going to come back to that, because I think that's the primary reason. So I'm glad you said that. At first, it shows the faith that Mordecai has in God and trust. What's he been doing for 3 days? praying and fasting, right? And everyone else. And he knows his God will hear him and somehow deliver them. And if it's not you, it'll be someone else. But most have written, like you just said, he knows the promise of God. Through thy seed, Abraham, what? All nations, God's bringing his Messiah, and so the lineage of Abraham cannot be wiped out or God's a liar. That's why Abraham was able to sacrifice Isaac after 3 days, in other words, 3, all right? Because he knew that God was going to raise him. Now, did God say that he'd raise him from the dead? No. But he knew that God is not a liar, and that God's faithful, and he gave him a miracle child to his wife in her older barren years. And so if he wants me to kill him, I get to see a resurrection. We learn that from Hebrews. So this guy obviously has some kind of faith that it might not be us. We'll get wiped out, but God will preserve a remnant, and he'll deliver us at another time, another place. Okay? But you and your father's house will perish. In other words, her lineage, her whole family line, it's over. And then last thing is the big question. And this is the part of the verse everyone knows. And who knows whether you have not attained royalty for such a time as this? Mary. Yeah, let's talk about that. If you didn't hear that, he has to allow his wife to be killed because a king's edict cannot be changed. He'll even admit that himself later in the next chapters coming up, that once he makes a ruling, he cannot even change it himself. It's just the way the Persian law was. A lot of countries were that way. And so he has to allow her to die. And so, yeah, it's that serious. Yes? Right, he didn't even say it was the Jews. That's right. He was very scheming and devious and deceitful and trickery, full of trickery, right? Yes?
I was just going to say, though he's pleading, Mordecai's pleading with Esther, he's basically saying, do or die.
Yeah, basically. Because you're going to die either way. You're afraid of going in there and dying because he won't accept. You're going to die anyway. So why not risk it? Yeah, I mean, this is your opportunity to make a difference. You're going to die anyway. Now, is that true for all of us? Are we going to die anyway?
I think the catchphrase that really probably initiated her response in an appropriate way was that she's attained this royalty for such a time as this. You were selected out of all these people. Why you, Esther? Yes, you're beautiful, but God had his hand in it.
Let's talk about
the silent part where God is working.
Let's talk about that, because that's exactly right. Again, you're going to die one way or the other. Deliverance will come. You're going to perish, but this is your time. So let's talk about that phrase. For such a time as this. There are, again, moments that decisive moments in our life that are going to define us because the path we choose to take. And there might be more than that one moment in our life, but God will put something in your path where you have to choose, are you going to honor and fulfill his will for you in your life or not? And here's the message. It's not a translation, it's a paraphrase. But notice how it reads this. If you persist in staying silent at a time like this, help and deliverance will arrive from the Jews from someone place else. But you and your family will be wiped out. See why it's a paraphrase? Yeah. Who knows? Maybe you were made a queen for such a time as this. That kind of captures the last thought. No, it wasn't just by chance that you were made beautiful. It wasn't just by chance that you were taken from your family and your home and brought to the king's harem. It wasn't by chance that the king's eunuch that was in charge found favor with you. I mean, it was all bad for you. You hated this. It was terrible. It was the worst of times for you. It wasn't by chance that you went into the king and he found favor with you and made you a queen. It wasn't just by chance. But you obtained this position by the unseen hand of God, because he knew he had to deliver his people, and he put you in the court as royalty so you could have the ear of the king. No one else could, but you could, because you're a Jew. He loved you, and you can plead for your case of your people. Isn't that powerful? So I don't care what it's not by just coincidence maybe we get cancer. Maybe it's not just by chance that we're in this building, that when the church was supposed to fall apart and close up. Maybe this is our time. Huh? And it's not just by chance. It's our time, all collectively, each of us, why we're here. And we have to look at it the way. Are we going to be an active participant or just a passive observer? And maybe it's our chance to reach people in this community that will never get reached. It's their moment. They'll get one moment. If we don't talk to them, God will bring someone to them. Because I think they all have one chance at it. So this is powerful. Yes, Clinton.
God raised up kings and kingdoms and delivered them to me.
Absolutely.
And take them for who he will, and rule in the affairs of men of nations.
That's right. So even though he's not mentioned, Mordecai is speaking from God's point of view throughout here. Yes.
She couldn't help that she's beautiful, but she can help that she's got a voice.
That's right.
And there's times for us in our life when hopefully we use wisdom and tact.
Yes.
But there's
Yeah.
times that,
Yeah.
we just need to speak up.
The most obnoxious thing, I should probably cut the tape because now I'm on my lecture circuit. It's people that think they're all that and they didn't do anything, but God gave them the gift. Like beauty. What do you do to become beautiful? You're born. It's the right DNA, and that's what he said. What do you have to do to become the best basketball player in the NBA? You have to be born with the ability. If you don't have the ability, forget it. Because I could practice. I will never make the team, all right? I know, I sat on the bench. So, yes, you have to use actively the gift you're given, exercise them. I get that, and that's what she's being called to do. But people that get really, really rich, what did you do? God gives you the ability to make wealth. The Bible says that, Deuteronomy says it's a gift from God. He gives you the opportunity and the ability to make wealth, puts you in a time and place, now use it for his glory. And don't be cocky and self-righteous and arrogant. And a lot of people get that way, don't they? And God's opposed to the proud. He's opposed to them. So yeah, it's a gift. It's God's in charge ultimately for everything. Because how many people are in the United States now? 350 million, perhaps? I don't know what the number is. Someone could Google it. How many people in the world? 7 billion. 7 billion? What are the odds of you being born in the United States? Everyone except Karina there.
Not very good.
Not very good. Why weren't you born in Congo, Africa? And if a girl, you'd probably be raped or sold as a sex slave. Why weren't you born in China or in Siberia? China, yeah, there's greater odds there. Or India, where they eat out of garbage dumps to survive. Why were you born here?
For such a time as this.
And all our blessings, it's easy. Tomorrow we're going to eat like kings, right? And watch football on a big screen. And you say, well, thank you, Lord. But no, it's a time. We use this for his glory somehow. What is he asking us to do for him? Yes.
What's the difference with Karina?
Because you weren't born here, and you weren't born. That's right. You came here. So both of you. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's being born here?
Yeah, I just asked, what are the odds of that? Yeah. Yeah. Right. So that's my little sermon or whatever. So Esther, she gets it. We might just get through this chapter, and that's fine. And so Esther told them to reply to Mordecai, verse 16, go assemble all the Jews who are found in Susa, that's the capital city where they are, and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. And I and my maidens also will fast in the same way. That's inside the court. And thus I will go into the king, which is not according to the law, and if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went away and did just as Esther had commanded him. She calls for a fast because she knows how serious this is. She might die. It's real to her, whether we understand it or not. So it's 3 days of fasting. They've already been fasting, but no food or no water. And I take that seriously. She means no water. So she could be quite dehydrated on the third day. And she's going to be praying to God. It's interesting. I remember the word 3 days here. But here's a principle we've talked about before. I can't control what goes on around me, right? I can't control Haman and the evil people of the world that plot against us or whatever, God's people. But my response is something I have control of. It's the only thing I have control of. It's the only thing. What I do in response. Nothing to act wrongly or do God's will. It's my responsibility to act that way. So notice it's interesting. She no longer be passive, but she needs prayer. She understands the power of prayer. So God's not in here, but what are they doing? They're praying to God. And the only way we're going to succeed is if we have this type of attitude. We pray on a personal level. And now, when we look at that, I thought I had here. Where is that slide? Did I skip it? Oh, I really feel bad. Well, let's just go on, okay? Is that all right? We're in chapter, here it is. It's coming right here. Let's look at chapter 5, introduce it. She's going to actually approach the king, and she asks for a banquet. There's a lot of food going on. And remember, it started chapter 1 in banquets, right? And then she invites Haman. This woman is smart, okay? That's the 3 days. She's not only praying, but she's coming up. That's right. She's coming up with a plan. Strategizing, that's right. And so Haman is invited to this banquet, and they're like, man, I'm the queen and me. And the king said, okay, what do you want? What's troubling you? He said, I just have one request. Come to another banquet, then I'll tell you. So there'll be a second banquet. And before that happens, Haman plots to hang Mordecai because he can't stand it, all right? So let's look at this. Came about on the third day. Let's read that, then I'll talk about it. Verse 1 of chapter 5. Came about on the third day that Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the king's palace in front of the king's rooms. And the king was sitting on his royal throne in the throne room opposite the entrance to the palace. Verse 2. When the king saw Esther, the queen, standing in the court, she obtained favor in his sight. And the king extended to Esther the golden scepter which was in his hand. So Esther came near and touched the golden scepter. By chance? No. She got favor?
No.
How did she get favor to be selected the queen in the first place? God. When we got people committed to do his will, he'll pave the path. He'll make it happen. All right? I know it's the third days, all right? So here, I think the one I wanted. Interesting. This third day is throughout the Bible. Abraham, how many days did he travel to worship?
3.
Oh, yeah. And then God delivered him on the third day from killing his son, right? And then we see Jacob, he escaped from Laban on the third day. Jonah is in the belly of the well for how many days? 3 days. And that well was given to him to save him from drowning. And the third day, it spit him up on the ground, right? Hosea proclaimed that God's rescue the people come on the third day. And here's the most important one. Jesus, the great deliverer, it was on the third day he arose. There's something about 30 days. And she's fasting for 3 days. God hears her cry. And she's going to become the deliverer as a picture, a shadow of coming Jesus, who on the third day will rise again to deliver his people from the grave. And she probably thought she was dead, didn't she? But she's risen from the dead here, and she's going to have the ear of the king. I don't know, I think it's just amazing. It's a day of deliverance for all these people. So let's look at what happens. The king says, what's troubling you? What does that tell you about her presence, her persona?
Well, obviously, her countenance wasn't the same as he was accustomed to see.
He
Not
knows.
only that, when you come within the presence of the king, you're not to be sad.
Well, and also,
The cupbearers, that was one of the
okay,
requirements.
good. So, yeah, you're not supposed to be sad. And the fact she's there, he knows that she took a big risk. Uh-oh, something must be up. And when you're married, you know when something's up, just the way when they approach you, right? In the same way with husbands to their wives. They know when something's wrong with me, right? So he knows you're here when you shouldn't be because I didn't ask for you. Something must be really bothering you if you're going to risk your life to come talk to me. You with me? Yep. What is troubling you, Queen Esther, and what is your request? Even if half kingdom will be given to you. Now, that's not necessarily literally a literal promise, but he's just showing, I'll do anything for you. It's like a figure of speech, right? Maybe he meant literally half the kingdom. You think he's going to give half his kingdom to this woman? No. But it's a figure of speech, most likely. So Esther said, if it pleases the king, may the king and Haman come this day to the banquet I prepared for them. So the king said, bring Haman quickly. It's all going to happen this day. She's already got it ready. She's been, planning this. So that we might do as Esther desired. So the king and Haman came to the banquet which Esther had prepared. And they drank their wine at the banquet, and the king said to Esther, what is your petition? For it shall be granted to you. What is your request? Even to the half the kingdom it shall be done. So Esther replies. Here's her big moment, right? My petition, my request is this. If I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition, do what I request, may the king and Haman come to the banquet which I'll prepare for him tomorrow. Now, I could say some snarky thing. It's just like, not answering the question and putting it off till later till you have to. Anyway, I will prepare that. Tomorrow I'll do as the king says. Now, this is going to set up Haman. And I think that's what's going on here. So Haman went out that day and glad and pleased of heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate and he didn't stand up or tremble for him, Haman was filled with anger against Mordecai. Haman controlled himself. However, he went to his house and sent for his friends and his wife Zeresh. Then Haman recounted them the glory of his riches, the number of his sons, and every instance which the king had magnified him, and how he had promoted him above the princes, his servants. He said, even Esther the queen, let no one but me come with the king to the banquet. Man, I'm top dog, right? And which he had prepared. And tomorrow I'm invited by her with the king. Notice verse 13. Some people can never be happy. And if you don't have a relationship with God, nothing in this world will make you happy. I don't care how much grandeur you have. Yet all this does not satisfy me. Because every time I see Mordecai, the Jew, sitting at the gate, then Sarah, his wife, and all his friends said, we'll have gallows 50 cubits high made. And in the morning ask the king to have Mordecai hanged on it. Then go joyfully with the king to the banquet. And this advice pleased Haman, so he had the gallows made. Isn't this guy in a terrible place? He hates Jews that much. So here's what happens. She initiates her plan, makes the request for him to come. And he says, tomorrow I'll tell you. And he's got pride and anger. Anger is so destructive to the soul. And a lot of angry people in the world, aren't they? And that's where the source of so much sin and evil comes from. He's filled with it. And it's interesting. This guy reminds me, him and his wife, of another character in the Old Testament. And his wife.
And that's Zerah.
Ahab. He was miserable because he wanted this Naboth's vineyard. And couldn't have it because the guy said, no, I'm not going to sell it. He pouted. And so what does his wife tell him to do?
So you gonna get it for him.
You're the king, just kill him.
That's exactly right. She's just as evil as Jezebel. You wouldn't name your daughter Jezebel. You're not going to name her this girl's name either. But she says, hey, you're in charge. Why don't you just build a gallows and hang him? And he goes, cool. 75 feet high. So what's a typical roof line of a house? Maybe 25 feet? That's 3 houses stacked on each other. Everyone's going to see it. Why is he making such a... He's showing that I'm in charge, I'm the great one, and he's going to hang his arch enemy on it. So, oh, yeah. Now, everything's set. The next banquet, who's going to be there? The king, Mordecai, and Esther. And he's going to ask the king, Naaman, yeah, thank you. He's going to ask the king to kill Mordecai, hang him, give him permission. Everything's set, and it looks like the end's at hand. But God's just quickly going to, and you're going to have to come back next week to find out what happens. I know. But it is exciting. Because I don't care how bad your life gets, God can reverse it in a moment. Just in a moment.